with individuals here in our log cabin, and then we'll move on to Zoom after that. Just a reminder for everyone for public comment, comments are limited to 3 minutes. We have the timer up here, and please just provide your name and address before you start. The floor is open.
Judy Hamelberg, 1015 Northeast 116th Street. There's one person in this village who's the reason our last two managers and our last two village clerks went looking elsewhere for employment. That is the infamous bully, McDonald Kennedy. The way you publicly shame our hardworking employees and staff and verbally abuse them is shameful. I think it's terrible. You pulled a similar stunt on Mario on his first evaluation, telling him you didn't think he worked hard enough for us. It does nothing but tear down staff morale. It doesn't help anything, and I think it needs to stop. This is not the village of Mac. This is the village of Biscayne Park. You are one person here in our village.
Well, I really hadn't, Gary Kuehl, 777 Northeast on 11th Street, really hadn't prepared anything and wasn't going to speak, but after hearing Judy Hamelberg, I have to say, yes, Mac is outspoken, he's direct, but he's the only one of the commissioners that ever says anything and ever does anything. Barbara and I sent emails to the commissioners. Who's the only person that responded? Mac. And he converses. And he listens, and he does something. I don't think our previous village manager was worth keeping, nor, well, our clerk was very good, Shantae, okay? But we've had a succession and continue to have bad village managers. And he's the only one that's going to say anything or do anything. So in deference to what you're saying, Judy, I don't think you're paying attention to what's going on in this village.
Hey, good evening. David Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue. I didn't think I was going to say anything, but I feel compelled as well. Been here 9 years. We've had good managers. We've had bad managers. We've had everything in between, I think, in that time. I think we've had 5 or 6 managers in 9 years. I think that the comments made by Judy in terms of Mac, I'm going to echo what Gary said, because most of the time we wouldn't know what was going on around here without Mac telling us. And yes, it has Mac's slant on it, but those of us who know Mac knows that that's his slant, as I have my slant and you have yours. Everybody has their slant on things. I think and it's hard. I've worked in government my whole life. Chris, I know this isn't fun to get, evaluated in front of everybody, but I think you the ones doing the evaluation, Chris, works for you, but you all work for us. We elect you. And so we hope that you take that into consideration. And I think the biggest thing that I want to comment on is that really to prove Judy's point and the opposite, we have no communication from the village anymore. When Mario was here, and yes, Mario had a little rough start, but I respected Mario and I think he did a good job for us. But Mario communicated, not always, and sometimes the technology didn't work and we'd get stuff late, but we usually found out what was going on. But now I just have no idea what's happening. That's the biggest thing, just in general, and I think other people would probably agree. And then when it comes to interpersonal communication, and I've said this to Chris in emails, if I ask Chris a question in an email, I feel like he's being deposed. I don't know if any of you have ever been deposed. I was involved in 9 class action lawsuits over the years in my role in government. Somebody asks you what today is, you tell them that it's Tuesday. You just went too far. You're supposed to say February 27th. That's it. Don't even tell them it's a Tuesday. that's the kind of responses I feel like I get. And so then you have to go back and it just makes things a little difficult. So I know you don't have an easy job. I know, Chris, you don't have an easy job either. And I wish you luck tonight. Thank you.
Andrea Livingston, 676 Northeast 115 Street. I've lived here for over 34 years. I've been here when we didn't have a manager. And I had to get up and speak right after you because the main reason why I came tonight is just to voice that over the last 6 months, I feel like on the website, I'm getting more communication than we've had before. And I appreciate that. Right now, I've got my daughter and a 5-month-old grandson living in my house with me. They grew up in the house, and I'm so pleased to see that what they're finding on the website is helping them to make contact with moms groups for Biscayne Park, other park activities, and knowing what's going on. So the one thing I'll say is I think government is complicated. I think sunshine laws are complicated. I think your hands are tied as the commission for what you can say to us in front of other people. I didn't understand this before, but I know it makes it hard. And ultimately, I agree with the last speaker. You guys work for us, but the manager reports to you. If you feel like he needs to do something different, then be clear about it. But we're a small village. We're much better with a manager, and we're unique and a little quirky. And so sometimes it's not a bad idea to help people know how to do the job that you want. So thanks.
I'm sorry, what was your name? Andres, thank you.
Barbara Kuehl, 777 Northeast 111th Street. I also wasn't going to speak because, like Gary said, we both wrote you very long, separately emails about our opinions. But listening to some of the comments, maybe there are things on the website about recreational activities. But when I go to the website, look at the calendar, it's for information about meetings, trying to find agendas, trying to find minutes of the board meetings so that I don't have to be there in person, but I can keep up. Just a simple example is the vulnerability study that was supposed to be to get residents' input. But if MAC put it on Nextdoor, and not everybody reads Nextdoor, and they shouldn't have to read Nextdoor. We signed up for eBlast because we were supposed to get information from the village, but that never happens anymore. Things used to happen. With the new manager, things have fallen off. I don't get eBlasts. I don't get anything. Right now, just before we left, I looked at the Nextdoor. Max said the vulnerability study was postponed, that it's going to be pushed 2 weeks ahead. So I looked at the calendar, and sure enough, it was off the calendar. But right above the calendar is this big letter saying vulnerability study on February 28th. I would never have looked at the calendar again because I would have thought it was going to be here. I would have been standing here Thursday night, very ticked off that nobody sent me an e-blast that this has been canceled. This is just one of the problems that I see with the new administration. And this is what I expect. This is a minimum, just attention to detail. If you take it off one place, it's right above you. Take it off the rest of the webpage. I don't know who's in charge, but it stops with the manager. He is in charge. We have a village staff that's the size of a small office. Let's face it, we all know we don't have a lot of employees. We don't have a lot of residents. We don't have a lot of land. How hard is it to just get some simple things right? And I agree with Gary and other people. If it wasn't for MAC, and believe me, everybody knows I don't always agree with MAC, but if it wasn't for MAC, I wouldn't know anything that was going on because I haven't been going to meetings the way I used to. And that shouldn't be the case. Thank you.
Linda Dillon, 712 115th Street. I wasn't going to speak either. But I feel compelled. As most of you know, I have attended more of these meetings than just about all of you put together. And in my 46 years, I've seen, I think 6, maybe 8 managers come and go. I've seen this without a manager, as Andrea mentioned. I've seen this with lots of other people that didn't last very long. I've also been volunteering now off and on for the last 5 years at City Hall. So I see day by day what goes on between the residents and staff and everybody else. This is the best staff we have ever had in all the years that I have lived here. I think everyone has been touting how wonderful they feel by being there because we have tremendous open communication among staff. And it's all because of our new manager. The last few that we had did a pretty good job for a lot of things, but we never had a staff meeting of any kind. And I was very fortunate to be included, even though I'm not officially staff. This is the first time we've ever had a manager who met with staff and asked what the opinions were of staff and what he could do to make us better. So I think you need to keep that in mind. He's coming up with new ideas for better communication. He recognizes that that has been a shortfall. And I don't want to bash anybody else. Mac, I think you've done a great job keeping everybody informed, and thank you.
So I might as well put my 2 cents in worth too. Sally Barr, 11501 Northeast 11th Place. And I'm with Andrea and Linda. I've been here over 35 years. We didn't have a manager for a long time. A lot of things have happened in the village. We are very quirky here, but I think that's why we all bought a place and moved in here. Because it takes all kinds of people to run a village. So Mac does communicate very well with people. I also think that the village manager has only been here 6 months. So I don't think you can move from where he came from in Wisconsin, I think. The laws are different there. The people are different there. The rules are different there. Because I know I'm from Michigan, up around kind of where he's from. And when I came here, I was in a total culture shock for at least 10 or 12 years. Took me a long time to get used to this place, but I did, and I love it. And I just, I think he's been working well with the board, the code board, the planning and zoning board. And I just think that things are starting to go, better, and we hope to just keep seeing that happen. So thank you.
Anyone else in the log cabin before we move on to Zoom?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, and residents. The Village of Biscayne Park employees are present voluntarily today to show support for our village manager, Mr. Chris Truitt. Manager Truitt, from the onset, has displayed leadership qualities that instill confidence, integrity, and support in the employees he manages. In 2018, I took over this police department that was being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Department of Justice, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. As a result of that investigation, several members of the police department, including the chief of police, were indicted, arrested, and convicted. At the sentencing hearing, the chief of police stated that he did not know how to handle the pressure that was placed under by political leaders and residential leaders at that time when addressing concerns. Obviously, he was over his head. In my opinion, many factors contributed to their downfall. In 2019, I experienced firsthand how political leadership wanted to weaponize both code and the police department against their enemies and the residents they served. That was not acceptable to me. I reported this immediately to both the State Attorney's Office, Public Corruption Unit, and the Miami-Dade Ethics Commission. In 2023, this commission conducted an extensive village manager search after village manager Diaz announced he was departing to North Miami Beach. As a result of that search, the commission selected Manager Truitt. Manager Truitt relocated himself and his family to South Florida from Wisconsin in a short period of time. During my first meeting with Manager Truitt, I asked him, why did he completely drop everything to move to Dade County? He stated he was passionate about public service and making positive changes. He also stated that during his search, he realized that this is a unique opportunity to work alongside residents who are passionate and love the community where they reside. I implore this commission to consider making Manager Truitt a permanent village manager. This commission recently completed a 10-year strategic plan that finally gives a manager guidance, direction, vision, mission, and goals that need to be accomplished. The constant changing of managers is not only detrimental to the employees, but to the 3,000 residents that reside in this village. I know earlier it was mentioned the website. The manager recently met with us. There's an app that's coming on board for all the residents to use, and we'll have more direct communications, not only with the residents, but with the political leaders. I also want to state, and I'm going to conclude with this, that the current system we run is me, myself, and I. The manager does it all. So I thank you all for your time and your leadership. Have a great night.
Good evening, Deputy Chief Steele with the Biscayne Park Police Department. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and residents. Reason I wanted to come up and speak today, I've been in law enforcement over 15 years. I've been all over the state of Florida under different managers, leaders, and guidance. Mr. Truitt, the village manager, is one of the best leaders, mentors, and people I've got to work with throughout the entire state. I've worked from the Georgia line all the way to Key West. His leadership style is all about communication. He's building a structure within and connecting all the departments. Before, we didn't work as smooth. We've always had an open relationship, but now within the departments, we have department head meetings every single month. We meet, we talk about what we can do to improve each other and help each other. We're creating intercommunication apps that we can say, hey, this tree needs to be trimmed for public safety, and Public Works will work with the police department to get it done. Unfortunately, in the last few months that he's been here, we've experienced some extreme tragedies and issues throughout the village. We had a bomb scare, which I don't think we've had in a number of years. We had a triple fatality. We've had trees falling, you name it. And he's been one of the first people to come out in the middle of a Sunday or a holiday without question to be there to support the personnel, get Public Works guys Gatorades or the police officers Gatorades to make sure we're getting the job done. He truly cares, passionate about this village and getting it done. He empowers the leaders within the departments to run the departments the way that we need to, but he also holds us accountable. When we come short or we fail, we're the first ones to hear about it, and what are we going to do to improve it? So his line of communication with the employees are incredible. His passion for the job and what he reaches out to do is non-comparable to anyone. I've worked directly under the governor, and he's been for several different governors, and he's been a true leader. Even when I rescued a dog on the side of the road that was hit by a car, he was the first one to take it in his office and care for that dog, and kind of adopted him. Sorry for the money to fix the dog, but he did it out of his care and passion. I've never seen a leader do that. He just, his heart is for, they say, I wrote a whole speech, but I kind of just talking from what I've experienced. It's been incredible. So with his guidance and leadership, I know that the police department, with the leadership of the chief also, we're going to get accredited this time. and push forward. And we're going to be the next icon for not only the state, but for the national level. And I thank you all, and I strongly recommend to the commission and the residents to keep this manager and make him a permanent fixture to Biscayne Park. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Commissioners and the residents. My name is Doreen Grant. I was contracted about 1.5 years ago to manage the code department. I walked into a pile of mess, for lack of a better word. And for the life of me, I could not fathom how a department that deals with so much legal paperwork could function without a standard written system, no procedures, no written policies, and no roadmap. I could use this time here talking about all the mistakes I found in the department, all the things that were being done wrong, but I won't do that. I'll talk about Chris. Chris meets with staff very often. He asks for input before he makes a decision. He listens and he offers resolutions. I have never worked with a manager like you, Chris. Now, the commander stole my dog story. I was gonna tell it. I've taken that as my story. I have never seen a man or a person who picks up a dog from the street. He kept it under his desk. That dog stank up the office. He took it home with him. And when his beautiful wife, Holly, walked into the office with that dog a few days later, I did not recognize the dog. I thought it was a different dog. It was manicured and pedicured. It was groomed. It was walking like it was wearing the best outfit in town. The dog was different. And I said to myself, what kind of a person or family would do this? Chris, you are good people. People haven't had a chance to meet you. They've heard about you. They've seen you on TV or YouTube. They've met you once a month, but we work with you every day and we watch you work. Last Friday, a gentleman walked into Village Hall with a weapon on his person. Chris stood next to the police. I know you were not afraid, but you stood between us and the gunman. And I was in awe. What a man. Thank you for being a great manager, and thank you for giving us a roadmap to clean up Village Hall.
Any other comment in the village before we switch to Zoom?
Danielle Huntington, 744 Northeast 119th Street. Like everyone else, I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I just wanted to give comment on, what's going on here tonight. So in terms of progress to the village, we want to include, the demographic, a huge demographic, which is younger families with children. And, the younger generation likes access to social media, being informed, making decisions based on that information given. So I feel like progress requires us to think about the future and think about how we are going to include this demographic if we want to progress as a village. Because I feel like we're missing out on an opportunity from our constituents by not getting their voice heard. I'm really involved with our kids in the community. We're always out. And all I hear from parents is, well, we don't hear anything, but we would love to go. We don't hear anything, but we would love to make it to the log cabin, until it's too late for them to come because there's no communication. I hear things secondhand, and it's really hard for us to get out of the house unless we have, parents or someone to watch the kids. So when we look at this review, I want us to think about how we're going to progress as a village to be inclusive to everyone, because we are falling very, very short on the communication. Like I was looking for the agenda for tomorrow because we had told our neighbor who's very concerned about flooding on her side of the street. And she took work off to, because this is an issue that's very important to her. And when I looked this morning, it was not on the calendar. There was no agenda. And so, I haven't had the time to meet up with her because she gets home at, late at night. And I have to tell her that the meeting's probably canceled. I'm not even quite sure, but I just want us to think about the future and how we're going to progress as a village in terms of, communication. I know the app is coming and that's great. And it's great that it's accessible for all and it's a one-stop shop, but how are we going to communicate until we get there? Because there's nothing, virtually nothing for us to, besides next door on Mac or secondhand from someone else who works close with the city. So just to take into consideration. Thank you.
We have no other comment here in the log cabin. We'll go ahead and switch over to Zoom. Seeing none here.
We'll start with Howard Goldman. You'll need to, there you go.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Howard Goldman, 11950 Northeast 6th Avenue. First, I'd like to say,
We can't hear you very well.
Losing you, Howard.
with respect to Mac, and as they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, Mac is one squeaky wheel, and he's gotten a lot of oil, and it's helped all of us get as much information. I'm sorry, hold on. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
My earpiece died out. As I was saying, that Mac is the squeakiest wheel and has gotten a lot of oil, and he's been the one to carry all of us with respect to information that so much of which we wouldn't have. Secondly, the chief took all the words of what I wanted to say and said it so much more eloquently. He obviously practiced this one and took a perfect 3 minutes to do so. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time in repeating any of that. All I can say is in the few times that I've had the opportunity to meet Chris in person, it was backed by his ability to deal with any of my issues or any requests that I had and to fulfill them with all the information that I needed. He's a straight up guy, someone that we should all give a really great opportunity to fulfill this job, because in 6 months, you're just getting your feet wet. Let's give the manager the opportunity he deserves. The request that he had with respect to insurance, which came up, I see no reason whatsoever why the village should not offer to him and his family health insurance. It's a small price to pay for a big role that he plays, and he puts his heart and soul into it. He's brought the entire family here from, I believe it was Minneapolis. I could be wrong because I heard something else earlier, Wisconsin.
Oh,
But,
we're going to have words now. It was Wisconsin.
It was Wisconsin. All right. There we go. Sorry about that, Chris. The cheeseheads. All right. So that's really all that I want to say is I hope that you all will really think about this and give this village manager the opportunity he deserves. He's got the backing of a lot of us. He's got the backing of a lot of us a lot of folks on the commission. And as obviously we can tell by the chief of our police. So thank you very much for your time and enjoy your evening.
Next up would be Mr. Anderson.
Yes, at the beginning of the public comments, I was beginning to wonder, is this an evaluation of the commissioners or the manager? But I'm glad to see the public decided it's a meeting of the manager's evaluation. And I do agree with a lot of the people that have been talking that our communication to the residents has been lacking. We used to be getting blast emails to us, to all the residents that had been asked many times to go ahead and sign up for. to realize what's important, things that are going on. And I hopefully that it will come back to having those blast emails going out, not expecting residents to go ahead and continually be looking at an app to see if there's something going on that they had no idea that was going on or may have gotten changed. The blast emails at least is a push system that comes out so you will know what's going on or if it's got changed. Now, if the plan is to have the same thing as a push going out to the residents, great, I'm all for that. Thank you.
No more on Zoom.
Okay. Well, I'll just thank everyone for coming here this evening and providing us your input as it's important to our evaluation. So thank you for being here and thank you for those on Zoom that took the time to provide their feedback. All right, so let's move on to our commission reply to comments before we move into the main portion. Do we have any specific reply at this time before we move into the evaluation?
Really? Okay, fine. I have not been here long enough to have an opinion. I have been somewhat disinvolved with politics for, closer, okay. For reasons that I don't think I need to elaborate on. Things that were happening 15-ish years ago kind of turned off the young idealist in me that things could be done smoothly, effectively, and efficiently around here. I have been purposely not coming to meetings and purposely not paying attention because I just didn't think it was worth the effort. I've heard more of the same has been happening in recent years. And, you know, when you have a young child and you're the sole breadwinner, et cetera, it's easy to justify prioritizing that instead of this. Now that I am back involved, I have to say in all honesty, I do not know, I have not, because of what I just said, I cannot render an honest opinion. So I'll just speak from a higher level of having been in corporate America for 20, too long. 6 months is nothing. And the only really is nothing. There's a saying that I've circulated and other people have shared and tends to agree. It takes 6 months to your passwords, find out where the bathroom is, find out who's who, all that. At a year, you should be making a difference. At a year and a half, you got to have serious feathers in your cap, have some real honest, accomplishments to show for it. So to me, 6 months is nothing. Now, granted, the scope of a Fortune 10 company and the scope of a small village might be a little different. Maybe that can be accelerated somewhat, but without babbling on any further, I just want to make clear that I really don't have enough exposure to everything that's been going on recently, except hearing the support that coming from the team means a lot. I think that speaks volumes. That said, there's always room for improvement. I'm sure others will disagree. And that's my comment.
Jonathan, I have something to say.
Sure.
I wouldn't normally reply to sort of such a general kind of a topic here, but since my name was brought up, I sort of feel obligated to say something. All of a sudden, it felt like it was the MAC evaluation. MAC's evaluation will be in November if he chooses to run for re-election, which he has not done yet. So that was kind of bizarre, but in keeping with our quirky little village, that's how things roll sometimes. But I do want to thank the staff for coming out. It's a testament to what you think about Chris, and more importantly, to the residents. I'm really glad to see a nice turnout at any meeting that we have. I dare say most of you found out about this meeting from next door because it was not widely publicized, as it was the meeting for tomorrow night wasn't either. And that's why that one got postponed. So I am glad to see that some people turned out regardless. So let's get on with the evaluation. And I sort of feel like I need to apologize that somehow I became some kind of a strange hurdle that we had to get over. What's the process?
Oh, I would have a proposal. I just want to make sure, did you have any other?
Yeah, I think I wanted to hear what your proposal
Sure,
is. So
yeah.
like I need to answer now.
Okay, great. All right, so then let's go ahead and move into the presentation, which is the evaluation. So my initial pass, and I would certainly like to hear from Mac and Art about how Mario's went to see if maybe it kind of gels with the ideology. To have, if that's appropriate, to maybe have Chris come up and just kind of give us a little maybe introduction if he chooses to do so, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the things that he's done above and beyond maybe what we've heard or what we've already read, to give him just kind of an opportunity. This is viewing it like any other evaluation, kind of becomes a two-way street to say, let's hear from the candidate, so to speak, and then let's hear from the evaluating board. So I would propose starting with that if you'd like to share anything with us. And then I don't know, running down each of the forms section by section makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering if we'd like to go commissioner by commissioner and say what specifically, did you have in your evaluation form that you'd like to address? These are all going to be part of the record, part of his personnel file. So he will have an opportunity to review them and, discuss with us, I think, any specific issues raised therein. So that's what I would say. I would say, let's just go commissioner by commissioner after he's had an opportunity to speak, and let's talk about our evaluation and any of the things that we'd like to discuss with him. I can say that some of the things that I put in mind directly kind of corresponds to some of the things that were said here this evening. So that's what I would propose.
So yeah, with that said, I think we are going to be discussing and kind of replying to all the comments in a way. I agree with having the manager speak out. I think this is an opportunity where you can actually answer those comments first. And then I think as an idea, I don't know if everybody agrees, going section by section is better, just so that we kind of follow the same line. We kind of say our voting or our feedback related to that before we move to the next stage. Otherwise, it feels like we're going to start from 0, 1 over and over, and maybe there is an opportunity to discuss specifically each section,
Sure.
I don't know how the rest will feel about that.
Well, I think we should just all do it however we want to do it. When we get to, mine, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think we should all just pretty much do it however we feel is best.
So he's saying, let's go through the entire evaluation, each one. And I'm suggesting maybe we go, I don't know, personal characteristics, each one talk about that, or you just do a summary. I don't know how.
I'd rather just run through mine when we get to me. For me, I'll just run through mine because what I did is each section is a score section.
Yeah.
I just wrote a brief synopsis on each one and how and why I scored the way I scored. So mine's going to be actually really quick. These, by the way, these are all public records, so you're all welcome to it. These will all go to the village clerk, and it'll be anybody that wants to see them later on can see them. So, but yeah, that's how I would like to do it.
Open another input.
I'll do it either way. I'm just glad that we're doing it in a good way, regardless of how we do it, because prior commissions that I've served on did half-assed evaluations at best. It was kind of embarrassing. So I'm just happy that we all agreed on a form and we're all here ready to go through it in one way or another. I'm totally fine doing it the way that Veronica wants to do it. I would be curious, since it is a numerical evaluation, I would be curious to hear everyone's not number for every single item, but the score for that section.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a really impactful thing if someone kept a record, if Pamela could do that for us, of everybody's score for each section. Right, and then share them with us. I'd like to even see it tonight, and then we can kind of get an average score per section. We did do it numerically, so I think there's some value to that. But when we if we do it that way, when we get to a section, I'm not going to run through everything that I wrote there. I highlighted 1 or 2 things in each thing that I thought were most important, but I don't feel a need to give a reason for every score that I have.
Oh, no, I'm not doing that either.
Yeah, I mean, I generally kind of feel the same way. I like the idea of let's look at the average scores through the sections. If there's anything within each section we'd like to discuss, the way I kind of had it was all of my written narrative feedback is in that second section. So it comments on a lot of those sections. So I think sharing the average numbers and then sharing what we feel we'd like to discuss.
Okay, but when we're done, if we're going to do that section by section, when we're done, I do have my overall feeling sort of generally encapsulated, and I'd like to hear, I assumed everyone probably has something like that. It sounds like, Art, you do. So I'd appreciate hearing all of that as well. Because then we have other discussions to have at the end.
Yeah.
I do, but it's not in one section. It's broken down.
Broken down.
Section. So you'll hear the whole thing, but it'll be broken up.
Okay. Sounds good. Madam Clerk?
What is it exactly that you want me to keep score of
I
tonight?
think what commission, right, the average scores of each commissioner's section. Then we can have an aggregate average score for each section.
Do you have a template with you printed maybe? Okay. So we're gonna start with personal characteristics.
Well, aren't we
Okay,
gonna
second.
start with him speaking
We'll
first?
start-
Oh,
Yeah, we'll start with Chris and then, the first section is personal characteristics.
Do you want to speak?
Leave the invitation
Is
open.
not speaking an option? No, let me just start with highlight some of the culture differences. In the world of politics where I come from in Wisconsin, both as an elected, which I served for almost a decade, and as administration management in state administration, which I also did for almost a decade. Things are a little bit different up there in that we do what needs to be done. We don't really have to blow our own horns. We don't have to broadcast to the world everything that we're doing. And that's something that is expected down here. And that's been a bit of a culture shock. So what I thought I'd do is just hit on some of the key points, real brief. When I first came down here throughout the interview process, as well as throughout my first few weeks and months, there were a couple of items that were brought up as high priorities. One of those was code enforcement. Code enforcement had significant issues that they were digging out of. I immediately identified that we did have the right people in the department. We just needed more people and we needed more resources. So that was the first thing that I dug into to be able to do that. The second focus was on Public Works. Public Works didn't have a director, so we didn't have the people. And we've all driven on the roads around here and see what they look like. We all know that there are other concerns with park equipment and things like that. So that was my second primary focus. And to that end, I was able to bring in a director. I was able to add a communication system. Up until our new radios came in, they were actually using personal cell phones to communicate throughout the day. So trying to get them the tools that they need. And now the next thing that we're working on is getting them the facility that they need. It absolutely blows my mind, and I'm not laying blame, but it blows my mind that a Public Works garage was condemned. That's just not something that should ever be done. So part of that is because we didn't have the resources. We didn't have the advocate. And that's something that I've tried to do with Public Works. And now we're sitting a heck of a lot better there. Communication was another issue. And it still is an issue. I have heard everything that all of you have said. I've heard all of the emails or read all the emails. I've heard everything that the commissioners have said. We've tried some things aren't working, and we're going to fix those. The thing that I tell all of the folks that I work with, as well as the commissioners, is this isn't about coming in and fixing everything in 6 months. This is about taking the steps that we need to take. This is about moving forward. Some of the solutions that we try are going to be the best thing we've ever done, and we're going to rock and roll and life is going to be awesome. Some of them are going to absolutely suck, and we're going to have to regroup, go back to the way things were, or find a different solution. And that's part of the process. As a manager, I would love to have walked into here with the silver bullet to all the problems and get everything solved and get it all done immediately. That's just not possible. So I appreciate those of you that have been patient. I appreciate the feedback that I've received from the commission and from the residents and from the staff. And that's all stuff that we're taking as we continue to move forward. One of the things that's been brought up quite frequently is the calendar, for example. And to that point, the calendar that we had, you couldn't subscribe to. The only way to see what was going on was to go to our website. So we tried implementing the Google Calendar where you can subscribe. We've had significant issues, so now we're looking at a different solution. It's all about finding the right mix of technology and information to please everybody. Jumping ahead a little bit, another issue that I saw that we needed to address was the police department. I'm sure you've all seen the vehicles that we have parked out here that I wouldn't trust to carry around my family. And these are what our law enforcement professionals are using. So working with the chief, we immediately identified some of the things that we can do to improve the vehicles as well as reduce the $102,000 maintenance bill that we had last year. To put that into perspective, $102,000 per year is the lease for about 10 new vehicles. We were spending that on just maintenance. So working with the chief, we were able to, we're actually perhaps sometime this week or next week, hopefully picking up some vehicles from the Miccosukee Tribal Police Department that have been donated to us. They're definitely not new, but they're newer than ours, and they're going to help cut down on that maintenance cost. We also, the chief worked with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. We're getting probably a dozen vehicles from Palm Beach County. Same deal. They're not new, but they're new to us, and they're going to help us reduce those costs. The police department, we've also worked with to realign some of the staff. So one of the issues that I encountered when I first came down here is the command staff, the top brass of the police department was doing a ton of administrative work. Every hour they spent doing a report or tabulating data is an hour they couldn't spend doing what they need to be doing, which is patrolling the streets, training, mentoring, and working with our staff. So we are now in the final stages of hiring an administrative assistant. So we're moving forward. And then the final thing that I wanted to touch on was the administration. We had a very unique situation in that there hadn't been a manager for quite a while. I forget how many months after Mario left. We had some interim managers. Shortly after I came in, the existing clerk left for a different opportunity, a better opportunity. So we had a brand new manager, new to South Florida politics, not new to government or new to management, just new to the way South Floridians do things. No clerk to speak of. I was thankful enough to be able to find our clerk who was able to step in and start working with me on that. One of the things, and Commissioner Holland, you'll probably appreciate this, having been in the corporate world, is when things fall apart, you need to fall back on the policies and the procedures that are in place to be able to run the government or run the company or run whatever it is. We don't have those. Those don't exist here in Biscayne Park. So we unfortunately didn't have anything to fall back on. We didn't have any instruction manual to read. So the thing that we've been focusing on this year, and Commissioner Ramsar, I know you and I have chatted about this, is creating those SOPs. We need to be able to have a system in place so that no matter who sits in this seat or that seat or the code seat or wherever, they have that instruction manual that they can fall back on and say, oh, this is how we do this. This is how we add the thing to the calendar so that it shows the agenda the way it should. Or this is how we enforce codes so that the documentation is proper. This is how we address customer, or I should say resident complaints, how quickly we respond and in what manner. Those things are completely missing. So that's been our final focus. I will say when I came into this job and I shared it with all the commissioners, I had my 30, 60, 90-day plan. So that is the things I'm going to accomplish in the first month, the second month, and the third month. This is stuff that I'd gained over the past decade in management and in government. It was day 2 of me sitting in that office that plan went out the window. Biscayne Park is a whole different, weird, eclectic, insane, intense, absolutely fun, and very endearing community. So my mistake, my downfall, after throwing that plan out, I should have sat back and just watched to see how things were going, and to try to guide my priorities. Instead, and this is a personality flaw that I believe my clerk and maybe code director pointed out to me, I'm a fixer. Show me the problem. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to fix that problem and we're going to move on. That doesn't necessarily always work. So my mistake was trying to put out fires, fix the problems that we had without being able to, without taking that step back to take a look at the big picture. And I'm going to close with this. That is the purpose, in my opinion, of a 6-month evaluation. That was the purpose of the evaluations I gave our administration when I was in your shoes, to say, hey, you know what? This worked phenomenally well. That bombed. And now here's what we want to see you work on over the next 6 months, or here are the concerns that we have that we want you to address over the next 6 months. Or here are the things we want you to focus on over the next 6 months. So I've shared with all the commissioners multiple times, my door is open. Come in, sit down, chat. Let me know what it is you're seeing. Let me know what it is I'm doing wrong. Let me know what it is you'd like to see done differently or improve on, and we'll figure it out. I do take my job extremely seriously, and I do take a collaborative approach. This isn't about Chris Truitt, the manager, coming in and running Biscayne Park. I've shared with my staff on the first day that I was here and shared with everybody else, I'm the bus driver. I make sure we have the right people in the right seats and the bus is going in the right direction, but it's everybody on the bus that actually makes this work. My job is to make sure they have the tools and resources they need, the guidance to know which direction we're going, and then the ability to be held accountable as well. So I hope that satisfied what you were looking for, probably a little bit more than you asked for.
I think that's sufficient. Okay, well, Chris, thank you for the introduction and kind of brief overview on some of the things that you've been working on, how you view the position. So I guess let's just go ahead and get started with our review.
Jonathan, may I say something real quickly?
Yeah, sure.
While I was listening to Chris, I made a spreadsheet here on my spreadsheet, a little chart. And so I have a list here of all the topics and all of our names, and I put the score in. I'll be able to give you an average score for each topic and an average score for each commissioner when we're done.
Perfect.
Yep.
That works.
And I'll make sure that Max
You gonna do it too?
I'm
correct
gonna double check my work.
You got a couple
heads
of
up
people.
properly.
It relieves you of the responsibility, Madam Clerk.
So I will say, if I may, just one other thing, you're going to see me probably not making eye contact and typing. I'm taking notes. So just keep talking.
Okay, so we can go ahead and just, I think, do this like we were talking. We can kind of have everybody run through their average scores. I'd like to just try and keep it commissioner by commissioner. I think it makes sense for one person to start and kind of stick with it and run through their evaluation. But providing those average scores for each section is good, so Matt can get them down, and then we can get each of them and then run into some of the things that you'd like to talk about, some of the highlights.
Mayor, I
Yeah.
apologize, just for the record, Vice Mayor, you'll make that available to me so that I can make it available to the public.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
I was just more doing it, Pamela, for Jonathan's benefit while we're discussing.
Excellent. Okay. Do we want to start with you, Commissioner Hansel?
So are we going section by section or commissioner by commissioner?
I think commissioner by commissioner, and you, as we run down those sections, we'll just kind of have you record each of them, I think. And then if you want, I can record them for yours, or you can do it.
So if each one of you at the end of your section, like Veronica, when you do the first one, just give me your average score when you're done, please.
Perfect.
All right.
Floor is yours.
All right. So I think I'm going to start before we run into each section with an open for context on how I came across or how it started this evaluation. I think it's important. So the first question that I asked Chris was sort of how evaluate yourself. Here's an evaluation. Tell me, what do you think? Because I think it's very important to see where the gaps are between what I perceive to be the job and how far you've come along to that answering to the role and what you see a success or not. So having that say, we have a system point of 5. So 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. And my context is that I told him, if you hit a 3, you're doing the job. You're not doing the job extra special, because that would be 4 or 5 to excellent, but you're doing the job, which you're hired to do. So to get there, each section has about 5 questions. And it's important for context because it's an average at the end of the day that we come forward with today. So personal characteristics, another context, I'm sorry, very important before I forget. I do have a one-on-one schedule every other week with a manager. So I am not surprised to anything that's going on. I would say we speak almost every other day. So nothing is really an alert, or I ask the question as many times as I need to, and he calls me back with the answer within the same day. If anything, leaves me a voicemail. But it's always been a very responsive, back and forth that we have, and I think it's important to give you that context as to how today I'm able to answer the evaluation. All right, and we're talking. So personal characteristics. And here's where he thought, you know, this is my 4. This is my 4 because this is where I do really great. I average across different areas to a 3.2. Do you want me to go into each one of those? I'm going to. So it comes with, has a strong work ethic, is diligent, thorough in the discharge of duties. I gave him a 4. Exhibits a sense of ownership of the position. It's a 3. Generally cares about the village and its future success as a community is a 3. Displays enthusiasm and cooperation, exercises sound judgment is a 3. And exhibits composure, appearance, and attitude towards appropriate, that is appropriate for execution. And the position, it's a 3. So overall here, he supports staff. I understand he has a style which is more led to delegate and support. He's really spoken incredibly highly of everyone that he has at the village. And I think this is where it comes through. He's trusting that his team is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And he has that sort of style. He's also the one having to say that, kind of having the tough conversations with each one of you, like some already addressed here. Never heard that before. I hear it from him when I ask the questions, why is this happening or what's going on here? He's never to say, well, Doreen said, or Raphael didn't, right? So it takes on, and I saw, therefore, all the items combined that I just read gives them a 3.2. I don't want to keep going, and
3.2?
Yes, 3.2 is my average. And that is a 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, okay? Averaging 3.2. And I'm actually going to get my calculator to make sure I did this right. Wait. Are you telling me we are able to average the 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 like that?
He's got it.
Okay, you got it. You got it.
He's ahead of it.
See, this is so good. You manage Excel so well. So I'm just gonna stop there. And again, if we can rotate who's first, I think that would be,
Well, I think the idea was each person is just going to run through their entire evaluation at a time.
no, I thought we said we're gonna go by sections.
I think, well, Art wanted to do it all at once.
Okay,
So I don't know I think if we do section by section, I think we're going to get a little mixed up.
okay, so you decided it's gonna be all along.
Yeah, I think we just want to run through the whole thing, if you can.
Well, I mean, I don't prefer it, and I don't prefer being the first for this. But if you put me through it,
Well,
I have to do it.
well, on that point, if you want me to go first, I'll go first.
Can I go first?
Yes, please. 'Cause I actually thought about it differently.
Why don't we just go?
Thank you.
Art's got it. Art's going to
Alright.
take us through.
So, like I said, I wrote a brief synopsis before each scoring section, so I'll kind of go over my synopsis. And then I'll give you the total score. Mac, ready? Personal characteristics. The private and the public Chris seem to be at odds with each other. Okay? Chris arrived with tremendous enthusiasm, but has been playing catch-up since his arrival. I've had personal conversations with Chris in regards to trying to do too much too soon, and that seems to have gotten him into a little trouble. Having gotten to know Chris since his arrival, these scores reflect the Chris I've come to know. Does he have room to improve? He absolutely does. But he has the right frame of mind and to get where he and his team need to be. For that section, I scored 17.5, Mac. Nobody said you can't give half a point, by the way.
17.5, the average would be somewhere between 1 and 5.
No, for the total. score.
That's the total. That's the total. So
Okay. So what, divided by 5?
Do it however you guys, yeah.
Okay.
You guys are the mathematicians. All right,
John's got us on that
all
one.
right, professional skills.
3.5 is what your average score is.
Okay.
Professional skills. We all know Chris came from another state. He has had a lot of things to learn while he is here. He's had to learn the state, local laws, rules, regulations, etc. He is in the process of implementing an app, as somebody else mentioned in the audience, for better communication. He has always been open to ideas and advice from me. I feel he has been a bit timid at times, but that comes from uncertainty and fear of making mistakes. This will also improve with time. So for that section, Mac is an 18. All right, we'll go on. Relations with members of elected body. Chris has had some struggles with disseminating public information on time and in an accurate way. Privately or to the commission as a whole, he has been over communicating. And I've told him this, bordering on harassment, to be quite honest. The man sends 5, 6 emails a day. I've never seen that much communication in my entire life. So he's done a great job communicating with us, in my opinion. Chris did not have the luck of our former manager, he stated that as well, who had an experienced clerk for 10 months after his arrival. He had 2 weeks before the former clerk resigned. He has had to learn his job, run the village, and deal with the demands from the commission and the residents, all while trying to settle in. I have no doubt that he will get us to a better place, especially where it comes to the communication piece. For that section is 16, Mac. Policy execution. Policy execution, he has been receptive to the council's intent and has been supportive. He has struggled with procedures to get to where we need to get to. I feel this is also something he is learning and starting to understand. He is overly cautious when it comes to laws and policies, relying on our attorney and our chief for input and support, which is not a weakness. All right, for that section, it's a 17, McDonald Kennedy. Internal reporting and communications.
What your average scores are?
No, I know what they are. We have had serious communication issues. We all know that. It's apparent. But by the way, we've had it here ever since I've been in this village. This is nothing new, okay? We peak, we seem to do this. One thing Chris has done has been, again, to overly communicate with the commission as a whole. His weakness at this point is having the same level of proper and informative communication with the community. Accuracy is also an issue that needs improvement. While it may not be his error, he is the manager, so it is his responsibility at the end of the day. For that section, it's an 18 as well, Mac. Citizen relations and communications. This is a difficult section to score because I do not know what Chris does on a regular basis with residents and privately, right? I do know that there are a few residents and a commissioner complaining here and publicly on social media about the lack of accurate and communication in general. I've already addressed that in the previously, so that's that. For that section, Mac, it's a 15.
This is citizen relations?
Yes, ma'am. Staffing. Chris has improved employee satisfaction significantly. The staff I've spoken to speak very highly of Chris and his leadership, as we've all heard tonight. The staff has never been happier since I've been involved in this village. So for that section, he gets a 20. Supervision. This is by far one of Chris's greatest strengths. He leads by example. He gives credit. He gives others credit for the good and always takes the blame for the bad. Chris has great leadership qualities when it comes to his team. And for that section, it's a 21. Fiscal management. Chris understands the budget and budgetary process very well. He has recommended some improvements, which I believe will help us in the future. He is always looking at ways to cut operational costs. For that section, he gets a 20, Mac. Community. In my opinion, this is a weakness that Chris needs to work on. While he is strong cooperating with other communities as well as regional and state agencies, he needs to improve when it comes to getting involved in our community. He needs to be more vocal and more visible to the community as a whole. And him and I have discussed that. That's an 18, Mac. So as far as the narrative evaluation, they're very brief and quick. So I can go through them or, okay. How does the manager work in alignment to the Biscayne Park strategic plan? In my conversations with Chris, he is always looking at our strategic plan as a guide to making decisions. What would you identify as a manager's strength expressed in terms of principles result? Employee satisfaction obviously has, which I already spoken about. Having spoken to many of our staff, they've never been happier. He has the right temperament for the job. God bless you. I don't know how you do it. I could never do your job. And Chris is very smart and is picking things up very quickly. So that's that. As far as the evaluation, performance, initial priorities, they're all listed there. Please pick up a copy and enjoy the read at home. What performance would you identify as more critical for improvement? External as well as accurate and on-time communication / information. Obviously, that's obviously from everything we talked about. what constructive suggestions or assistance can you offer the manager to enhance performance? Slow down and finish one thing before moving on to the others. This is a marathon, it ain't a sprint. Get out more, have better and more frequent visibility within the community. And then I think it's the last one. I hope to God this is the last one. Yeah. What other comments do you have for the manager, expectations, goals for the new rating period and long term? I'm certain that Chris and the team are headed in the right direction. Of that, I have no doubt. As previously stated, we have room for improvement 1000%. We are up, but are we moving in the right direction? I firmly believe we are. And that is that Cracker Jack.
Your average score was 3.61.
See, that's why you needed to go first.
He set the standard, he set the bar for us. Thank you, Commissioner. If we can just work back down this way, I'd be happy to go if you like. Okay, sure. All right, so I know context you mentioned, obviously important. I don't have the narratives within each section that Commissioner Gonzalez had. I have my scores, a few of which I didn't really find quite appropriate to address by number. So maybe I just said I feel like this is a yes, he has, or no, he hasn't. Either way, I still have numbers for all of them, so I have an average, and I'll just provide it as we go. But again, as far as narratives for each of these, I don't really have. I have narratives at the bottom that kind of expand on and support the positions that I have. I will say that 5 is certainly an extravagant score. I don't know. When I do evaluations, 5 is usually quite difficult to achieve, and 1 is basically a fireable offense. So, I will tell you that most of mine average in between 3 and 4, which is not a bad thing in the context of my review. So I'm just going to run through these by section. Personal characteristics. That's my highest score for you, Chris. I had that averaged out as a 4. Professional skills. I'm going to slow down because I don't want to go too fast for you guys. 4 is the average for the first one. Yes. I don't have the total number like Art had. I just have the average, unless you want individual numbers, but okay. Professional skills, I set it a 3.8. Relations with members of the elected body, I also set it a 3.8. Policy execution was the first section within which I had a few yeses and nos. The first of which, implementing elected body actions in accordance with the intent of council. To me, that's a yes or no. You do or you don't. So I just have a yes for that one. So there's a couple of those in this section, but again, the ones that I scored with a number averaged out to a 3.5. Internal reporting and communications, I average out of 3.6. Citizen relations and communications, this was the lowest that I had at just a 3. Staffing, I had set out at a 3.6. Supervision, I set out at a 3.8. Fiscal management, I set out at 3.8. Community, I set out at a 3.6. Now, it's interesting to me, and I'll preface the portion where I go into the narrative, to hear a lot of the feedback that we've gotten here this evening, and also already some of the feedback from Commissioner Gonzalez, because it's interesting to me how my narrative kind of mirrors that. A lot of the positives are all the same. But a lot of the areas for improvement are a lot of the same. I'm going to start with areas of improvement because I have those listed here based on what I've heard this evening and what I've already included in my narrative. Communication is a big one. Communication in what we've heard this evening and in emails from residents and at times in the past with our commission, we know communication is an area in which we desperately need to improve. I am very, very hopeful that our next rollout for the application that links to all these different channels will provide much needed and instant updates. And I know that's coming out in the next couple of days. So I'm hopeful that addresses a lot of those items. And if it does, I know that will address some of the concerns that we've heard from residents and that we've all had. Some of the other items that I've heard too, interpersonal communications, certainly falls within that kind of broader category of communications. Interesting to hear the way that you kind of prefaced this idea with difference in cultures. Certainly, to Art's point, you know, having that demeanor and having kind of the affable personality is certainly necessary for the position that you hold. You know, agendas and minutes is something else that came up too. I kind of put that within a communication, sort of under the communication banner too, because it's very clear, you know, over the last couple of months, we've had some issues there, and it's another area that needs to be corrected. I hope that the change to the calendar, you talked about a little bit in your introduction, that the change, we tried a calendar, it didn't work. We're going to try something different. Things like that happen. But it's certainly that among these areas for improvement, I probably think is the most critical. Because it has a direct impact on what we do, and it has a direct impact on the village itself. So these day-to-day, and this is something that I identified in my areas of feedback and areas that need to be addressed and can improve, is day-to-day kind of functionality. Agendas kind of fall in there, notifying those things. Again, I certainly hope that the app will improve that, but certainly attention to detail. I know someone mentioned attention to detail, and that falls squarely within that area of day-to-day issues. So areas of improvement, certainly. You know, I had a note here from something that our code director said too, that about your just personality, a general personality, and kind of your ability to work with people, and kind of the compassion with the dog story. And those things are fantastic. They really are. I don't want us to lose sight of, you know, there are two sides to the job, right? There's a job of working with the people, but then there's also the job of doing a lot of these things better too. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. Those are important things to think of, though. And it's interesting what you said, Commissioner Gonzalez, kind of the private and public personas. That's kind of addressed by a lot of these things. So it's kind of an interesting way of framing it that I never really thought of before, but I like the way that you put it to us. So again, areas for improvement, always. You know, everybody should, in a professional situation, employment or organization, should always be striving to improve. And complacency is, I think we heard it at the Parkland meeting, where complacency is just unacceptable, and we know that. So those are the areas of concern and areas of things where we need to improve. But going back to my narratives here, I'm not going to read it because they're quite long. I just tend to kind of write this all out. Working in alignment with strategic plan. What I've seen so far is taking direction from the commission. We've seen it as recently as the capital improvement budget, working with Alan, working with our contractors to identify priorities. I identified a few areas that were immediately pointed out as areas of concern: flooding, resiliency, drainage, traffic, improved code enforcement, department autonomy. All of these things are certainly items that were pointed out in strategic plan, items that need to be addressed, items that need to be approved, and I see a focus on that, and I see them improving. So I think that has been a positive experience so far. Strengths, I feel like we're going to be hearing and saying a lot of the same things, but it shouldn't be belittled with respect to your ability to work within the departments and work within our village staff. We've heard a lot of positive things. I've spoken personally with a lot of people before this meeting, and just tried to understand how they feel about working with you. And I will say that it's been nothing but positive. So that's a good thing. Ownership, something that I know that we've talked about before, and in my experience with you, times when we've had inclement weather, this is reflective of your ownership of the position, and your concern for the village, and ownership of the role, and current concern for everything that we deal with here in the village. When we've had some inclement weather, we've been in constant communication. It could be 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and we were talking about what's going on, where the flooding, where emergency service is going to. So there's a dedication there, which is helpful. Performance on initial priorities, kind of already gone over a lot of that. Improvement, we've already talked about the areas that we all seem to identify. Everyone seems to be kind of in alignment so far. Enhance suggestions on enhanced improvement in performance. Certainly some of the things that Art said, I don't have those specifically, but those were good points that he made. You know, I think maybe some better organization could be helpful. Things like, I don't know that you have these in your own internal processes, but things like when we leave a meeting and we say, Chris, we'd like you to work on this thing. We'd like you to go out and get a request for that, or we'd like you to bring this back to us in a couple of weeks. Sometimes those things can go unaddressed. And it's not specifically, it's just the ball seems to be dropped sometimes, and maybe some better organization on making sure that we address those. And I think what I would recommend is bringing back kind of a more comprehensive manager's report for each of our monthly meetings. It might help us identify what things we've addressed, what things we need follow up on, in kind of a status. So we don't get into a meeting and say, oh, gee, we asked about this 2-3 months ago. What's the status with it? So I think something like that might be helpful. I have in here changes to the calendar system in app communication systems. I certainly hope will provide us some improvements. I think that they will. I'm excited to see how those work. Other comments? Yeah, I think I've really covered it. There's a few areas. There's always areas for growth and improvement. We've seen a lot of good things, and we see that we are on track to address some things in the future, and I'd like to see those things borne out. I will share that I did have a conversation with Mario leading up to this evaluation, because I wanted to get a perspective of a manager who's been here. He's familiar with the intricacies of this village and the people that work here. And a lot of things that we've already said today, I know that we've highlighted. Chris came in, it's been 6 months. Chris came in, had to get a new clerk. He came right into a budget season, had to get a new clerk, had a turnover in our attorney, had to staff some departments, so there were some challenges. Not that Mario, when we spoke, not that he advocated one way or the other, but he just said it's something to keep in mind. So there are challenges, and he said
I'm sorry, say that last part again. Mario said.
Not that he was advocating one way or the other for this meeting here tonight, but just say, keep these things in mind when you're doing an evaluation, that it's a 6-month period, and he came in with some challenges. Also, we don't really have perspective on this issue, but I'd like to point out that Mario had mentioned that you've gone to the managers associations. I've been to some League of Cities meetings with you, so there is an effort to go out into the community and learn and forge connections. So he said that was a positive thing too. But he provided some good perspective from a position of a manager who's been here before and still continues to be a manager. So I've rambled on long enough. I appreciate the time. If there's anything that's unclear, I'd welcome any questions, but I'll be providing my backup to the clerk to add if anyone wants to read the full narrative that I have, because it's a little bit longer than I've summarized. So that's all I have for now. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Amzon.
Jonathan, your average score was 3.65.
Thank you.
Mac, do you want to go first? Oh, you go. Okay.
Can we go?
Yeah.
John?
Yielding the floor.
I was kind of confused. I was a little confused what John was going to do. I wasn't sure if that was his evaluation earlier.
To be clear, I'm not comfortable providing numbers at this point. This is my second touch point. I got my email 2 weeks ago. No. Making large, important voting decisions based on inadequate information is a very American thing these days, but I am not going to do it.
Thank you.
Although I saw something on Facebook that I think,
Mac, do you want to are you going to record your scores as you go through?
Yeah, I already have mine recorded. I'm just adjusting my formulas here because I had him included in the calculation.
Gotcha. Okay.
while he's doing that, I just have a curious policy question. This is to come up with a number that will allow us to, I guess, reach a consensus on how he's doing. The probationary period is already ended, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
What is the policy around the ease of making a change before and after? Now that it's a moot point, I don't even think we need to go too deep on it, but did the ship, like in my world, if there's a probationary period, it means that it's much easier to say, no, this isn't working out, et cetera, but
We can do anything we want to anytime.
it's an at-will employment state, of course, exactly, it's Florida, thank you.
It's Florida.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just had to quickly adjust there. Okay, so I'm not going to run through all of my comments on everything or every score. I'm going to try to go quickly through these sections. So let's start with personal characteristics. I highlighted a couple of things, Chris, in each section. You'll see when you get this from Pamela. So I'll just point out sort of some highs and lows and some things, and not something in every section necessarily. Under personal characteristics, I gave you your highest score of 4 for exhibiting a sense of ownership for the position. I felt that from you from the day you arrived. It's something you and I discussed when you were here for your interview. I gave you an average score of 3 in that section. Professional skills, your highest points were 4 for demonstrates a capacity for innovation and creativity. You've brought lots of ideas, and I appreciate that. Average score in that section, 2.8. Relations with members of the elected body. So this was your lowest score on my evaluation. I gave you the lowest marks for disseminating complete and accurate information and setting organized meeting agendas. I gave you 1s in those sections. I'm really very, very disappointed in that. We've had lots of conversations about that at meetings. Some of this may not be your direct responsibility, but they are yours in the end. So you got low scores there. Average score in that section, 1.8. Policy execution, average score of 3, and it was just kind of average all the way across the board. Internal reporting and communications, that's within the commission and the village. Again, average score of 2.8. It was just pretty much average straight right down the line. Nothing was terrible or extraordinary. Citizen relations, also a 1.8 here. Very low scores for communicating proactively, adequately, and clearly to residents. We discussed this, Chris and I have many times, and certainly when he was here to interview, about proactive communications, the word proactive being the most important thing there, and head off so many problems and get everything headed in the right direction and makes a lot of drama go away and gets people on board and on the train with you. So I'm very much an advocate for proactive communication, and that's not going well at all. Staffing, above average or average for most of it, but the total score was a 2.6. And that's because for recruiting and retaining competent personnel for staff positions, I think there is an issue there. So I gave you a low score on that. Chris and I have had a direct conversation about my feelings on that, and we have come to some agreement on that already, and I know he is aware of that already. Supervision. This is regarding Chris and his staff. I didn't score in one of the areas because one of them is about how you evaluate your staff, Chris, and you haven't done annual evaluations yet, as far as I know. So I removed that one from the list. But I gave you your highest score in that section under develops and maintains a friendly and formal relationship with the staff. So I've personally experienced this. And clearly, based on the turnout here this evening, staff likes Chris an awful lot. Now, that's the upside to that topic, but here is, I'm going to turn it into a bit of a critique as well. I get the feeling sometimes that you feel like you're working for staff rather than for the residents, and I'm looking for a more resident-centric approach to managing the village. I feel like it's much more about the staff and keeping staff happy, which is great, than it is making the residents happy. And a large part of that is informing the residents. So best marks for relations with staff, but I think it speaks about where your focus is, and I think that focus could be moved. Fiscal management, I gave him an average score of 2.6. Everything's pretty average.
Average on supervision again?
3, I'm sorry. Fiscal management, 2.6. Everything was kind of straight down the middle. One thing was a little lower than the others. Community, the average score is 2.8. And my overall average score is 2.62. So it's just a little below average. And average is, you know, quite frankly, not what we paid for. And that's what I want to talk about here at the end when I wrap up my comments. So then there are a whole bunch of questions that we were asked to answer, and I'm not going to go through all of them. You can pick up my report and read it directly. But regarding his understanding of the strategic plan, yes, he clearly understands that, and he has put together a CIP, capital improvement plan program that reflects that. So that's all very good. his strengths, very enthusiastic to get a lot of things done in the 6 months. And I think it kind of bit him in the butt a little bit because too many things were done not well enough. And that was the problem. And we need a greater attention to detail. I know other people have said that, so I'm going to repeat that. There are a lot of loose strings. And here's my biggest comment on that topic. While you're working on long-term solutions and things like I hear about apps and reports and metrics and KPIs, while all those things are being worked on, we still need the job done well. And the job was being done much better under the prior manager, and he didn't have any of those things either. So that's when it comes down to taking a look at what's going on and saying, okay, here's the solution to this that'll make it easier, better, faster. But in the meantime, I still have to look at the calendar and make sure those agendas are up and that the backups are all included properly and that Ts are crossed and Is are dotted. And if your staff's not doing it, then it's your job to do it. And I'm that guy at the company I work for, and it kind of sucks to be that guy some days, but someone's got to check to make sure it's right. And unfortunately, that falls on you. Staff mistakes are your mistakes. And there's Chris, you have a bit of a laissez-faire attitude about managing staff, hands-off approach, and let them do their job. You've said those words to me. I think you've written them to me as well. Step back and let them do their job. Unfortunately, that'll bite you in the butt sometimes because when they're not doing their job well, it comes back to you. Communications to residents. So look, everyone listening knows my opinion on that from the day I moved here. And you all certainly know, and Chris knows as well. So I'm not going to go on and on about it, but this is an epic fail. It's worse than it's been before. We had people in charge before who made sure things still got done, even though it was difficult to do and they didn't have all the tools and things they would like, but it got done better than it is now. This meeting tonight was on the village calendar and he says something went on social media. I looked for it. I couldn't find it. So this is an important meeting. We're evaluating our manager for the first time, you know, and not many people knew about this. Tomorrow night, there's a meeting that was labeled as a resident input meeting with the specific sole purpose of getting resident input on a major topic, flooding. I didn't know about it, Chris. I looked at the calendar to look for something else and I saw it and I'm like, what's that? And I opened it up and I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. And that's how I learned about it. And it was not promoted to residents in any kind of a proactive way. And the sole purpose was to gain resident input on this very important topic. That's a huge fail for any meeting, let alone that specific meeting. So that is a very major concern of mine. And now, of course, everyone knows that meeting's been postponed because Chris decided that more people did need to know to provide more input. So now that meeting is postponed. Big disappointment. And it just seems like that's one after another, after another, after another. Someone needs to mind the details. Engaging with residents. This is another big topic. And this was a major disappointment, Chris, when you started. Before you got here, you and I had a conversation and I was like, and for the record, I welcomed Chris enthusiastically to the village. So I'm allowed to be critical of critique. It's my job. And I welcomed him with open arms. He came down here for his interview. I gave him the grand tour. I drove him around the village. We walked, we drove, we talked. My husband and I took him out for his first Cuban meal that night. So it was open arms, welcome to the village candidate. And then I enthusiastically, voted for him. And one of the things we talked about was when you get here, something that's really important in Biscayne Park and might be different than other places is engagement with the residents. You have to know the residents. We have to hug them in. We all need to do that. But it comes from the manager too. And I said, let's throw a party for you. Let's throw a meet the manager party when you get here. I'll help organize it if you want me to. We'll get the word out. We'll have a party at the log cabin, drinks and snacks, and get everybody there to meet him. I said, Chris, trust me, you will get a turnout in Biscayne Park to meet you. And that will get the train out of the station in the right direction. That one little thing. Chris, you were all on board until you got here and then said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, Mac, my job is policies and procedures. You're the politician. It's your job to engage with residents. That's not what I do. So all of a sudden, then we had a manager who didn't want to engage with residents. And that was a major, major disappointment for me. And as a result, I think when people don't know, they start filling in the blanks in their head on their own, and they come up with not good things sometimes. Constructive suggestions. Chris, ask more questions of the folks who know more than you do. You come with a wealth of knowledge in some very specific areas, and it's one of the reasons we hired you. But there are people who know more about some of the things that are going on, and I think you would benefit from asking people those questions. You have an attorney, you have us. Some of us have lived here for much longer than others. You have residents here who have enormous institutional knowledge in addition to their professional experience. You have the benefit of that. And when you have a little tiny staff and a big responsibility, you need to tap into resources. And I don't think you've done that. There have been some communications to staff and commissioners that I thought were kind of odd and questionable, if I'm being honest. And I put that in my notes. So if anybody wants to read about them, you can. There one went out yesterday that was particularly odd. And in terms of priorities, it's for me, it's a lot about communication, and I'm concerned about the upcoming budget season. Chris, you came in here right at the very tail end, and you helped us get that done very quickly. You got the CIP thing added to it, which I really appreciate. But here we go into what will be your first full budget season. I'm concerned based on the attention to detail that I've been seeing in lots of other areas. I have a real concern heading into budget season. So I want to make sure that you're prepared. We talked about some more better working forms that we could use. So that's a big concern for me, is what's going to happen this summer. And the last thing that I would say here for priorities would be, if to get things done better, you have to get fewer things done, I'm okay with that. But and I think Art spoke to this, to try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to everybody. And I feel like that's where we are to a degree. So my average score is a 2.62. I have some other comments here that I'll make when we're all done doing this, and we're going to have a discussion, I'm assuming. I have some other kind of closing comments I'll make then. Cool?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're up.
I appreciate you guys going first. It gives me an idea on how, I don't remember, I wasn't here when it was done with Mario, but I was wondering what the process was going to be.
You weren't on, I thought you were here for one evaluation of Mario, no?
No, that's why I said.
Oh,
So
I
it's,
thought you were.
no, it wasn't, no. So this is the first time I go through the process. We have a template. I mean, I'm all on board to put a number. So I'm going to tell you what I did originally written on each section, so you guys can keep track of my numbers. So for the first section, in personal characteristics, I had a score of 3.2 as an average. Professional skills, I'm going to go through all of them and then I'll go to my remarks. 3.2 as an average as well. I had a 2.6 for relationship or relations with members of the elected body. I had a 2.4 when it comes to policy execution. I had a 2.6 in internal reporting communications. I had a 2 average for citizen relationships and communication. For staffing, I had 2.8. For supervision, I had 3.2. For fiscal management, hold on, am I reading it right? Hold on, no, yeah. For fiscal management, give me a second. The other way around. It's a 2.6, for community at 2.8, and that's it. Can you make sure I have all? I'm just going to repeat them backwards. 2.8, 2.6, 3.2,
Yep.
2.8,
Yep.
2,
Yep.
2.6, 2.4, 2.6, 3.2, 3.2.
Your average was 2.74. Is that what you have as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
I'm glad I did this with your guidance on Excel because I did it 3 times on the calculator. Okay. Awesome. So, All right, so I'm gonna kind of continue what I was stating at the beginning. For me, 3 was getting a job well done. And so there's very aspects to going into depth into each one of the things. But I take this an opportunity, sort of a reflection of our job as well. When these things are not being done properly, like we've heard them today, I have the responsibility to own that as well. Because I do communicate, like I said, we have constant meetings, we have constant opportunities to reassess if what we're doing in the right way. And when things doesn't happen, even though we have several communication, things happen along the boards that are not visible. They're very much behind the scenes. They guide us to where we are right now. And I have to take ownership as well of that. So I'm gonna go into the bottom part of and you guys will have to see my comments as well that I've written. I have a lot of text. I'm gonna see how to abbreviate, but there are open-ended questions at the end of this. The first one says, how does the manager work in alignment with the Biscayne Park strategic plan? And how does he move the village towards our agreed upon long-term goals? So we developed in 2022 the overarching strategy for the village for the very first time ever. So we had a base to start with that is richer than any other place I think you'll see. I mean, very few municipalities of this size have one. So it's a very good guiding map. The next phase was to address how do we get it done. And I think Chris was wonderful in providing for the very first time a document called CIT, to the extent that we actually touched the budget to allocate specifically a bucket for it so that we can track progress of how we're doing. And he started conversation about the CIT plan maybe a month into his role. So he knew that was a goal. We just finished it. For the first time, we have a draft we're going to be discussing in March. So having the 6 months to accomplish landing a process that is so broad and so complex that took us several parts and several minutes to get to, I feel it is a huge step forward. And I mentioned this to you. You had an objective in mind that was to keep moving forward. You kept addressing that in your emails, saying that's the job. It's not to restructure everything that was done. It's more to move along. And you got into action and in the administration of the village the day you got in. And this reflected in a ton of items that you put your hands on. As a matter of fact, you addressed them when you were doing your feedback to the comments. But I have them all listed here as well. I'm just going to mention a few. COOP as an idea, which is a continuity of operations plan. If something sort of an emergency happens, we need to have it addressed. That it didn't exist before. We have one. The CIP, as I addressed it, the performance review for employees. There is a template that's been approved and it's going to be reviewed. I believe it's July, the deadline. You created the role of the deputy clerk with the idea of transferring and keeping knowledge, because we experience firsthand what it feels like to have key talent in the village stand up and leave. When they leave, they take the knowledge with them, they take the expertise with them. We sort of start fresh. And that is a huge 1 step forward, 3 steps back, reason why things kind of don't seem to happen. We've had several managers. We have several clerks. So as long as this continues to happen, processes aren't clear, someone needs to take ownership of that and address it, or it will continue to happen. There were several, we did police department changes in terms of the structure, promotions, accreditation that needs to happen in order to address safety concerns. In October, you launched a payroll system that allowed employees to clock in and out. You made very much of a code enforcement sort of a focus, because you heard us talk about how much we needed this addressed. You hire a new public directors right away. I mean, this I have them by dates, by the way, and this was November. So a code director, the idea of separating the departments and retaining key talent was brought to you. All of this, I mean, my list goes on, goes from When was your first day in the village?
August 15th.
Okay, it starts August 16 with the COP plan. So I just want to translate a little bit of what goes behind the scenes to all of you stating all the comments that came forward about all the things that are not happening, and you're not wrong. Those things are not happening. But there is so much behind the scenes within the 6 months they are that I think they need to be also put out there in stage. Having that said, before I close this, so another thing that I think is important, you touch base with our previous manager. I mean, trying to stay connected when you come from Wisconsin with the Florida League of Cities, County League of Cities, other commissioners, other village managers within the association, but specifically holding, calling on firsthand to our own manager just to address some of the things that were a challenge, to speak out about how engaged you were to try to fit in. And again, not someone that lived here. I think you've done a great job. I also appreciate looking into the administration efficiencies. We spoke about, you mentioned about $160,000 in efficiencies. There were efficiencies is sort of a big way to say we're not saving money, but we're readdressed to kind of tackle other things that we needed to tackle that were in line with getting more staff in, specific to the code department, as well as making certain adjustments to titles and things that were overdue in the capacity of a manager that you have the ability to do. All right. So that's how I see you move things along. And again, they're not really are able to permeate to the community. What performance areas would you identify as most critical for improvement? And I think you'll see it on the numbers at the end of the day, but I have 3 specific. One is strategic mindset and the ability to advocate for this plan. At this stage, I would slow down, research, and lean into action with the advocacy of the commission. There was an extensive list above that I just mentioned. As soon as you got started, you got into it. How ready are you to implement while testing these areas? It's sort of a question that I have. Bring these ideas to the meeting, discuss them prior to executing them. Let the strategic plan of action translate to everyone else besides staff. And I think to what I heard tonight from other commissioners is it seems like everything is happening between the village four walls. We need to make sure everybody else is aware of this as well. And the community hasn't felt that. We haven't really approached that with a strategic plan in terms of communication. So they are not aware of all of this. So slow down, have a bigger picture from above. I've talked to you about low-hanging fruits. There's so many things. I mean, coming in, when you see an empty seat for 6 months, that you're going to want to address. So this leaning into action that I think it's a key asset to have, at the same time can steer you away from the bigger picture that is needed. So it is important that you slow down, kind of take a moment. I would have, and I address this with you, I would have let everything happen. Maybe not in 6 months would have done much. And, it took me part of the commission time as well, 6 to 8 months, to really feel like I'm ready to go and say what I think. You have to have the ability to feel how things work. And I think with all the intention of trying to do a lot, we fail probably of being more strategic about how. Accountability of staff over goals. Ensure you have the right people by your side. As I've shared with Chris several times, I believe you're as good as the team you hired. So I'd want him to tackle this first. Ensure that the goals and the guidelines are clear and met within a certain deadline. Define the processes to better determine the level of service that we want to see transpire through the administration. And I can't tell you again how highly he speaks of all of you. He does believe he has the right team by his side. This needs to translate into action plans that you guys are able to measure, that we can all see in action. Again, showcasing it's going to be my next point. So the third one is community outreach. Now show it. That's why I put right? So everything I said is sort of in a hierarchy. So strategic plan, hire the people, do the job. Now the next step is to show it. This is the biggest one the community wants to see. But again, it goes in stages, right? And I feel we need to take the moment to get there. Showcase the work of the talent you have behind. Strategy, define what it is. What channels communicate events are not the same channels that should communicate an agenda. If that's what you decide it needs to be changed, define how to work around that. It is the role of the village to make their residents aware. I mean, I keep saying this over and over. I don't believe it is my responsibility to keep you updated as a commissioner. It's my responsibility to ensure that there is assets and funds and talent behind making sure the village makes you all aware. This is a right as a resident you all hold. As a matter of fact, we do have in the budget for the first time, I don't know for the first time, you guys will correct me if I'm wrong, but we have almost double the budget that we've had before for media. We have about $35,000. It was 20 the prior year before it was cut, and I don't know if it was one even before. So we have it, but we haven't gotten there strategically, and it still haven't been spent. So define what that's going to look like. And we've had so the village voice again. Yes, so we just got it. We never had it. We never had it. And I'm telling you, the voice is literally as intimate as it is for every person. So Mario had his, and Chris will have his. The point is there's certain things that cannot be left unsaid. And that's what we heard here tonight. And I appreciate everybody's comments coming to me via email, via text, calling. It's incredible to see how everything echoes very similar, because these are the same pressure points I keep seeing. And communication, again, is the end result of what's happening. And there's so much behind the scenes that is not seen. Constructive criticism, I think, comes in many ways, and I'm going to end here because it gets more tactical as to how to approach some of these things. But I gave Chris several points of view on how to tackle this. Slow down, showcase your thoughts prior to executing them, get the community and the commission to buy into the ideas prior to moving full speed forward. Speak out more. That is a big one for me. I told Chris we meet every other week, and fortunately, I do most of the talking as I'm doing now. It's a bad habit. I talk and I talk. But I always tell him, tell me, why are you so quiet? What do you feel? And it's very professional, it's very stoic. And I feel this, unless we break down this concept that we're not, nothing is falling apart. No, I mean, please tell me if it is, because then I have a better grasp of his reality. So part of, being able to identify what needs to be done has to be brought up. Find a space per week to connect with the community. I gave you ideas on how to do that. Design a space for complaint. You had that when you came for your interview process. You had actually a format you presented to us. You had a 30, 60, 90-day plan. I was in love when I heard that. I was like, where do I sign? This is insane. I mean, we have clear expectations. And that went out the door. I would love to still see it, because there is a lot of maybe you've already checked, and there's a lot there's still to come. Push for communications. I mean, again, it comes to the strategy on how we tackle. There's many things to address on the area. So that's my summary overall. I know the numbers speak of almost being around the 3, which is getting the job done. So there's many areas that we're below. And that's because of the average. I have some 4, I have a 2s. And so at the end of the day, it averaged the way it averaged. Key issues that we've had. Communication internally, and I think I've said it before. I don't like to see things escalate to a level we cannot solve it anymore. I'm going to tell you an example. It was the meeting happening this Wednesday. If we see the meeting has not publicly been noted and people don't understand what's going on, it has to stop. I mean, we're not waiting a train to rack against another train. head first to then evaluate what a disaster it was. We stop it right there. And I'm glad that it happened, and we're not having the meeting on Wednesday, and in fact, we'll have 2 weeks to properly communicate. So when there are things like that that we can see are not working, we just have to have the conversation and stop them right there. And I think in terms of that, other things that have been kind of hard to untangle, it's relationships, right? There's a lot of new to staff, new staff to us, new processes in place, new org charts. Again, everything is happening so fast. So people need a moment to digest, to understand. I think this is the next phase of looking into the next 6 months. I gave you 3 objectives, and what I'm hoping to see within this 3: strategic mindset, accountability of staff, and community outreach. I would like to see a plan laid down moving forward. So that's sort of my summary, and I know we're going to talk about next steps, so maybe we do that together.
That sounds
Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Thank you. So, well, that's next. All right, so we've had an opportunity for everyone to run through their evaluation. We've heard.
Scores, want me to read the scores?
Yeah, I was actually going to give a range, but I'd like to be reminded, so.
So I averaged everything, and then I ranked them from, in each category, from highest average score to lowest average score.
Okay.
And I can give them to you by commissioners if you want it. So the highest average score was 3.55 for supervision. Personal characteristics, 3.425. Professional skills, 3.35. Staffing, 3.25. Fiscal management, 3.25. Community, 3.2. Internal reporting and communications, 3.15. Policy execution, 3.075. Relations with the elected body, 2.85. And the lowest score was citizen relations communications, 2.45. So the average score for all of us across all of them was 3.155. 155. And then the commissioner ranking is the highest score was Jonathan, 3.65. The next was Art, 3.61. The next was Veronica, 2.74. And then me, 2.62. And John opted not to participate in that part of the ranking. So they range from 3.65 to 2.62.
Okay. All right, well, that's good information for us to have. So I know there were a few other discussion items that some of the commission wanted to have an opportunity to address. I'm a little confused. I think Vice Mayor Kennedy had a couple other items. I think Commissioner Amser, you had a couple.
Well, we have other things to discuss. I was going to give go ahead.
No, I wanted to understand what this means as a group in terms of next steps. So we've all talked about things that we would like to see addressed, and them very similar in a way or in another. Does it mean that we have a time frame for that? Does it mean I understand we are going to have another evaluation 6 months from now. So are we coming back and defining those, doing it here out loud, saying this is the order in which we want them? How do you see
The order
this
we want
feedback?
what?
Yeah, because so I highlighted 3 specific areas I want to see done.
Right.
I don't feel he needs to leave with 15 if they're sort of all different, right? Or yes, if that's the answer. I'm asking. So how do you see as a next step for him taking this evaluation?
Well, we have our next 6 months when we'll do this again, and we have some really good data for us to compare this to because we want something that's directly comparable. I know that we've all identified some of the same issues that we think are areas we'd like some improvement. If you have those 3,
Yeah.
we could start with that and see how we feel. But I think we have an evaluation form where we have numerical values, we have data.
Yeah.
We'll be able to compare.
So I think the ranking that you just said clearly speaks about the areas of.
It ranks them from his strongest areas to his weakest areas.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do this. Because we have some other things we have to discuss. This is the point at which you would discuss compensation changes and things like that. I mean, we have to get to that. If we choose to do that, we're not required to do that. But maybe we have this chart that I put together. I'll double check it, make sure all the numbers are right. I'll send it to Pamela. We have a commission meeting in 2 weeks. At that point, maybe we just have a conversation about it. And from that list, we each kind of come with, okay, if we were to give Chris, he has the capital improvement plan that we're going to, I think I keep calling it the wrong name, don't I? CIP, is that it? Capital improvement plan? He knows that he's being measured against that for the next 6 months as well. But from here, these are the more kind of nebulous things. We come back and have a discussion about from here, what specific things do we want to pull out? Because we can't just say citizen relations / communications, do better. I mean, maybe we have to give him things, but it's not fair to just sort of give him something, a word like that and say, do better in that area. So maybe we come back with some specific things.
So that's why I was bringing it up. I have them written down. I think we all do, right?
You know,
So-
just items that we've identified as areas of improvement, sure, yeah.
So you have your comments on every area and what suggestions you propose, right?
But if what, Vice Mayor Kenny, what you're suggesting is we take this information, we kind of digest it and we see if there's anything, I know there's some things that have been brought up by the other members of the commission, some things that, you know, Chris mentioned in his introduction, so to speak, that might change how we see these things progressing. I'd be more inclined to say we can look at these items, we can take those items that we've identified as areas of improvement or suggestions and see if any of that information impacts that and changes it for discussion at the March meeting.
At the March meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, so then,
So just to be clear, we're going to identify areas that we've already identified to tell Chris that he needs to improve. Is that what we're gonna do?
we're going to make them more concrete. So for example, the lowest ranking, if we were going to go from the lowest to the highest, the lowest ranking is citizen relations / communications. Well, if we just give them that topic and say, do better, anyone can come back and say, look, I did better because I did this thing, you know? I think we need to think about that and say, what is it in that area that we need him to do? That we really want him to do? How,
That we want to see.
yeah, exactly. Like we want to see
It not necessarily be something, it's just, we want to see results based
in
on.
this specific area. Like I'll say something here, and I'm certain I'm allowed to because we're at a public meeting. Yes, I can say whatever I want to. On the March agenda, you're going to see that I put an item on there regarding how meetings are noticed with some suggestions of specific things. As a result of that conversation, we might decide, okay, that's how we want it done. And that would be a specific concrete item pulled from that general topic. I just think these topics are kind of general, you know, and if we don't get concrete with him, it's not fair to him.
Okay.
I like the.
And listen, the way I look at this, honestly, is that Chris is a very smart man. And we've already evaluated him. I'm sorry? No, go ahead. Did I interrupt your? Oh, okay, yeah. So that's kind of what I was gonna say. I think he's smart enough to figure it out, but if you guys feel like, you know, we've already evaluated him, he knows what he scored low on and what he's done well on. It's very clear. I think we've all pretty much mirrored each other as far as so, but if you guys want to be more specific and ask for tangible, I mean, things like, I don't know,
See, and that's
less next door posts, is that something that, is that a tangible result of more communication? I don't know.
That's the word I like, Art, is tangible. When you're going to give someone goals to achieve, if they're not tangible and really specific, you're setting yourself up to not have delivered to you what you wanted. Well, this is what we meant. And then the employee reports back, well, I thought you meant blah, 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 or I thought this would have been good enough. If you're loosey-goosey, you're going to get loosey-goosey results and you can't measure loosey-goosey. But if you say we want A, B, and C in that order under the topic of communications, then he knows. Then he knows what he wants us to deliver on, and he knows what he's going to be evaluated on. Otherwise, you end up with an evaluation of something. And if we do it at the next meeting, Chris also has the opportunity, because he's going to get the same thing, to come prepared to discuss it too. Like, hey, guys, in this topic of communications. I think this is something that I can get done that would solve the problem, and he's also in part of that, he's involved in that conversation. I just think the more specific you get, the better results you're gonna get.
So I'm fine. I'm fine either way. I've done a lot of evaluations. I've been evaluated a lot of times and I've never had an evaluation recommendation, detailed recommendation. But listen, I understand what you're saying and I'm good with it.
I'm also okay with, because I have, again, I brought up the issues that I think I would like to see within the next 6 months and within certain timeframes. I want to be fair, and that's why I brought it up, that I am not adding workload to the manager on my perspective issues that he has to address if they don't coincide with yours, because then he'll have a triple agenda, and that's not the intention. So mine, we're very broad. I'm not specific to tell him how the plan for communication needs to work. I'm just asking that you plan a communication, some sort of a plan ahead, and present it within the next 3 months. Part of it you're already done. You have the app coming up. So for me, that is very specific. The strategic mindset was about going into all the different departments and addressing that you have the right things in place. What would you move forward from that you've done that didn't work? A sort of reassessment of the things that's happened and what's coming next. And then the community outreach, which were ideas I already have highlighted.
So I would have a recommendation, but if you have
Yeah, if I may, all of the comments tonight were generally in the same veins and the same themes. My suggestion, and this is to avoid having the commission in a position where they're telling me specifically what I should and shouldn't do on a daily basis to run the village, because that's kind of against code. Why don't we give this a little bit of time? Let me come to you with, this is what I heard. This is what I think the plan should be. And that'll give us a point from which to start.
I'm sorry, because I didn't understand something you said. Go back to the part about we can't tell you what, to say that part again. I didn't catch that.
The commission can't run the village on a daily basis. So for the commission to say, I expect you to do 6 Nextdoor posts a week. That's not something the commission should be doing, in my opinion. In my
Okay, well,
opinion.
that's two different things. First, you said we can't.
In my opinion, what I will do is come to the village or to the commission to say, we're going to focus on additional communications via Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, for example. And here's the policy, or here's how we're going to create the policy, or here's how we're going to decide what to do. So rather than get into the nitty gritty of specific, this is what it is, I'll present my plan. And you guys are more than welcome to say, no, we don't like this. No, you're missing the point. Here's something different. That's just my suggestion.
Okay, but just to be clear, you said two separate things there. First, you said we can't, and then you said we shouldn't. So those are two very different things that you said.
Can't.
And right. But it's my understanding that if the commission decides on something and we want something done a certain way, we can direct you at a meeting where we have a quorum and where we have a majority opinion on something, we can direct you to do something. Brad, am I correct in that?
You can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So you can direct the manager as to policies. And you've kind of done that to some extent during the course of your evaluation by laying out what your expectations are. You can certainly make suggestions as to how to accomplish those policies. But to the manager's point, if I understand what the manager is trying to say, is that the manager, you've hired the manager and it's his responsibility to carry out the day-to-day operations of the village. And as a collegial body, can you give him direction? Yes. But he basically has the decision-making process as to how to go about and accomplish the goals that you set for him.
So, all right, so understanding what I've heard, your recommendation kind of took the words out of my mouth. What I would do to both points here is I would say, I'd like you to take what you've heard and put something together to say, these are the ways that I am working, or these procedures or, implementations, whatever, are designed to address the issues, and this is the expectations that we have, or these are the results that we have. To Vice Mayor Kennedy's point is, if there are responses and other maybe solutions that we can provide or recommendations within that framework, I think that that's appropriate too. So again, to both points, have some time on our March meeting to allow you to address some of the feedback that we've given here tonight, and then also give us some time to say, okay, these are good, we like this, we would also recommend this. Just a general response, I think, to make some recommendations. So I think that kind of addresses both things, and I think it kind of achieves the purpose that we're looking for. If there's any disagreement, I'm certainly willing to listen.
Well, what we can do is have expectations and results. What we shouldn't do, and I don't know if it shouldn't or can't, is to micromanage Chris and tell him step by step how to get to where he needs to get to. That's his job. He's the manager, and that's why we're here to evaluate him. So I think that, we should be results driven and not be telling Chris, Chris, don't walk this way, walk around that side. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I understand. No, I understand what you're saying, and I think what we're talking about for March is giving an opportunity to respond and provide some context and say, these are the things that we have set up to address kind of the larger issues that we've heard, or the larger kind of feedback points that we'd like to see some improvement on, and that we've received from residents, and that we've received, the commission has voiced their opinions on. And then maybe not down to the granular level of, say, to your point, like, well, we want 6 next door posts, not that granular level, but to say, hey, we'd like to see maybe exploration of a communication platform. We already know that's coming. This is a bad example, but a solution for this, and we've heard, or we've been addressed, or we've been contacted by this group that, might have something that we can look into. Some larger points. I don't know, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Vice Mayor. I don't know that you were saying to the granular level, we want this exact things done. But I think having the discussion item for March to allow you to provide some context and responses, and then to have us kind of have a discussion on that, I think that achieves the purpose. Yes, Madam Clerk?
I just want to interject that having started with the agenda today, you have a extremely full agenda for March. You have about 6 discussion items already.
Well, I can say mine should be fairly quick. So hopefully that'll take care of it.
Look, things fall off the bottom of every agenda. We don't get to them and they get pushed.
It shouldn't stop us from putting them on there. So I think that's the next steps. I'm certainly open to any other points that we'd like to make.
Are you evaluating the items that are remaining in March, or is everything to come forward then in March?
Say that again?
So for the March agenda, are you evaluating, you as a mayor with the manager, if that's going to be the end agenda, 6 items plus 1, I believe 7? Or are we saying some points we're eliminating something to make room for this?
If
It's unclear, and that's why.
If I could jump in for just 1 second, the March agenda, complete with the backup that we're required to have, goes out in 2 days. There's no way I can complete this in 2 days.
You can complete what in 2 days?
A plan to address the deficiencies with the backup.
So then is what you're proposing to do this for April?
Let's do this in April. That'll give me enough time to put a decent amount of thought into this, as well as have the appropriate backup in place in the agenda ahead of time for everybody to review.
Okay.
Well, that still gives you 6 months, Chris, to get stuff done, because your hire date was August, but your evaluation's in September. We have to do it by the end of September. So that still gives 6 months.
I'm sorry.
Support?
I'm voicing support of what you said.
Okay.
It gives you 6 months, so.
Perfect. Okay, so we have some direction on what we're going to do with this information that we got. We're going to go forward with the intention of putting this on the April to readdress it and hear some ideas from Chris on addressing some of the feedback. I don't want to summarize because I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but we've heard some good things. We've heard some things that we'd like to see some improvement on. It sounds like we have a plan to go forward on how to address those things. I don't have anything further to address with Chris or the commission right now, but I'd leave it open to the floor if anyone would like to raise anything before we move over to our adjournment.
I would just like to say something. as an end remark, thank you for your patience throughout this process. You've been open to ideas. You've been receptive of feedback. I think a lot of it, and at least I know because of evaluating system 2s and 4s, at the end of the day had to reflect a number. A lot of this is not specifically on you, but you represent everybody. And so I think ownership of this, and tonight I feel it was great. I mean, hearing everybody's feedback was very clear. Hopefully, the next 6 months showcase that. So thank you for your engagement. I hope it continues to stay this high. And the same thing for everybody from staff being here, that the morale stays the way it is. I've seen lots of cohesive sort of a response from staff. I tell you, every time I go into Village Hall, there is a feeling of content that I really appreciate, and I hope it maintains that moving forward to put the energy you guys need to get things done. So, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to say some closing comments as well, sort of scripted. So I'm used to coming in here and giving more glowing reports than I did tonight. It was not as bad as some people, I think, anticipated that I might be giving an evaluation, but wasn't so bad and was kind of in line with Veronica's. So, but I much prefer to come in here and give glowing reviews like I did for Mario twice, actually. And for the record, just to clarify a silly, weird comment that was made earlier, I did not run any managers out of this village. No one of us has the power to do that, as we all know, and as former commissioners should also understand. We did fire one manager for cause. Some of you are probably not fully aware of why we did that, but it was for good reason. And I believe it was a unanimous decision of the commission at the time. Another manager left the village of his own accord because he went to a community that paid him 2.5 times what we pay here. And, Godspeed to Chris that he's going to find that opportunity someday too. We're all very clear about that. That's what happened. No one was chased out. Mario went and got a better job. So good for Mario. And Chris is probably going to do the same one of these days as well. That's what happens when you live and work in a little tiny village with a little tiny budget and a little tiny staff and a very small number of residents. But I do want to say one other thing. There are some things that Chris, and the rest of you know, that I have been very unhappy about in the past couple of months. That whole budget mess at the end of the year, the issue with the attorney firing us, some really big ticket items that we can't forget. And I hope they don't tell us of other things that might be coming down the road. But at this point, I just want to be clear that Chris and I basically almost have an adversarial relationship, much like he does or did with the attorney. So that's where we stand now. And he's not going anywhere. He's staying here in our employ. And Chris, I hope that you and I can figure out a way to work with each other the way that you and Brad, I hope, are finding a way to work with each other as well. I would hope that you'd look at me at this point in the meeting, that you could at least make eye contact with me while I'm sort of extending an olive branch.
As I mentioned, and taking notes.
I understand, but this is kind of like I'm talking right to Chris. So Chris, you and I aren't doing so hot right now, and I hope that gets better because we both want good things for this village, and we both want you to succeed. We both need you to succeed. So I'm committed to working on that, and I hope you are as well. But I don't think the village is in a better place than it was when you started, Chris. And I hope we get that turned around very quickly. And a lot of it were some things of your own doing. So I hope that gets better. So guys, at this point, this is when we would discuss giving someone, changing their compensation package. This is traditionally where we would do that. Now, we did do this with Chris already. I forget how many, Chris, how long were you here when we gave you the additional health insurance?
I want to make a quick clarification on that. During my pre-interview meeting with you, Commissioner Kennedy, told me that the village pays the manager's family's health insurance. There wasn't an asterisk. This is one of the benefits. And so one of the reasons that I chose to take this job,
Did I tell you that, Chris?
knowing full well that the salary was what it was at $100,000, which, Madam Clerk, you did that survey 3 months ago. Where does Biscayne Park rank? Bottom. Okay.
We're also the bottom on a lot of things. Chris, I'm
So,
sorry, back.
so let me just finish.
No, because you just said something that you just called me out on something.
And
When did I tell you that we paid your family's health insurance?
It was during one of the pre-interview meetings. It might have been actually,
A public meeting or a conversation you had with me?
this is a conversation you and I had.
And I'm afraid you may have misunderstood what I said because I may have been talking about what we did with Mario, but I don't have the ability or the power or the authority to extend any kind of compensation to you. And you signed an employment contract that had all of that detail in it.
So if you'll allow me to finish, we had that conversation. And the reason that I accepted the position with the lowest paying is understanding that that was part of the deal. We'd have that.
Based on something that wasn't given to you in writing.
So what you're saying then is I can't trust what you say. I have to do my own research to
That's
verify.
really slick, Chris. See, this is what I'm talking about.
This
Chris.
is, let me
What I'm
let
talking
me
about.
finish.
Let's, everybody, just take a second, okay? Look, we just came to the end of a review. We have a wrap up. I understand there's some at odds.
And I just brought up the topic of, do we want to give the man a raise? I'm the one that brought it up for him.
Guys, can we let Chris speak and then give Commissioner Kennedy an opportunity to respond? Because I mean, I think that's just fair. Talking between each other is not going to work. So
Yeah, so
who's running this meeting, you would speak and then you would have an opportunity to, but it's up to you.
So that's the conversation that we had, and I took the job knowing full well what the salary was going to be. I'm not expecting $120,000 a year. I'm not expecting what Mario is getting at $200,000 a year. I was just expecting what's fair, and I thought the deal was fair.
Okay, so I'll officially respond to that now. Chris, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will repeat that I don't have the ability or the authority to offer you any kind of compensation. If you thought you heard something, all that really mattered at the end of the day, and you're the guy who approves contracts around here, all that really mattered at the end of the day is what was presented to you when you were offered the job. So if you accepted a job that you did not completely understand all the benefits in the compensation package, that's totally 100% on you. That is not, you don't get to call me out and say, well, Mac told me on a private phone conversation that that's how it happened. That's not how we roll, Chris. That's ridiculous that you would even bring something like that up. I'm like so disappointed that that's the direction you're going to go with this. So back to the point. I just brought up the topic that at this point, guys, we get to consider an increase in his compensation, or a change, I should say, to his compensation. We already did it early in the game. Okay. And we didn't do it, to be clear, Chris, to make up for something that you misunderstood that I said to you on a phone call. Okay. We did it because Art brought it to us. Art, when you brought it to us, did you say, in your head, was it because I had told Chris something that was wrong? Okay. So there you have it, Chris. Art did not bring it to us to make up for a mistake that you think I made. He brought it. Why, Art?
Two reasons. Number one, the chief was making more money than our manager.
There you go.
First reason.
And
the second reason was I just thought it was fair.
Okay.
That our manager.
Right. So Art was being a mensch when he brought that to us, Chris. A mensch is a Yiddish word for a good guy. Good intentions. It's not what it might sound like. Art was being a good guy. Art brought that to us on your behalf. Did you discuss that with Chris before the meeting, or did you? So Art brought that to us on your behalf, Chris, because he's a mensch and he thought you deserved it. I didn't. I voted against it. So did Veronica, but the other three voted for it and you got it. You had been here a matter of how many weeks? Was it even double-digit weeks?
I believe it was at the 3-month mark.
Okay. Couple of months in, before you had a chance to accomplish anything, before you had a chance to be evaluated. And that's why I said no. You're already the highest paid manager we've had. So guys, do you want to discuss a compensation? I don't want to consider any increase because I think you shouldn't have gotten that one. At this point, maybe I would be considering it this one, but I just want to remind you that we just gave him about an average evaluation for his work performance here at Biscayne Park. So do we give people additional compensation for average performance? I guess that's the question.
Well, I after I completed the evaluation form, I wasn't really expecting us to have that conversation.
But you do an evaluation.
Oh, certainly. No, not.
So what you can do.
You can do a.
Yeah, yeah.
It's usually after I mean, again, coming from Herald or Caribbean, Kesson, these things are usually done after.
We did it at 3 months.
Well, to your point, we've already done something at the month mark, so.
I'm just bringing it up because this is the point at which in the evaluation meeting, we would have that conversation if
Have
we
we-
wanted to. So I'm being a mensch and bringing the topic up. Do you guys want to entertain the topic, John? Art?
Not really.
I think at the 12-month mark, we should.
John?
Well, since we've taken that step already within the 6-month tenure that we've had, Chris, so far, I think
Or a no for now?
we achieved that, and I'd like to see the year progress. because
Veronica, do you want to,
I've always received my,
Veronica, do you want to consider anything now or wait for the 1-year mark?
No,
Okay.
I think this evaluation for me is directional. Again, I mean, I don't have enough to be able to talk about salary at this stage. Like I said, we're around that average. There's so much to do. I feel comfortable at the year to have that.
Then we all agree. I wanted to bring it up to be fair to Chris, to make sure that if anyone was thinking it and didn't want to say it out loud, that the topic would be on the table. It died on the table. We're done.
All right, listen,
so,
can I just say one thing real quick?
yeah, sure,
Before we continue? What month is this?
February.
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 His evaluations.
I have a few more months here.
You're here till November,
Yeah,
did you?
exactly. But,
Yeah,
but,
early.
but here's what I'm trying to say is y'all need to get along because I'm not going to sit here, and deal with this till November. I'm just not. So we haven't had this kind of tension between a manager and one of our commissioners since I've been here. Not to this level, to an adversarial, which is.
Do we go?
Yeah, but I wasn't here.
Yeah.
The point is that you guys need to figure out a way to work together. Just like you figured out a way to work with our attorney, you need to figure out a way to work with Commissioner Kennedy, because if not, this is just going to be a disaster for me, it's going to be a disaster for the next couple of months, and I don't want to do it. So I'm asking you guys as men, please.
I brought that topic up earlier and that's why I wanted to make my final comment that we need to figure that out.
But I think somebody after this, somebody needs to take a step and just try to
Yeah.
bridge a gap here, guys, and talk and just get in a room and just have a
Agreed.
conversation.
That's why I brought it up.
Please.
Jonathan, I have a question for you and I guess the attorney. At this point, his probation period's over. Do we need to vote on making him a permanent employee? Do we need to do something official here to make it?
Brad and I have had we had the discussions about the probation period ending. I think the answer is no.
We can just, it just
Correct.
happens.
The answer is no. You don't have to do anything
Okay,
official.
so we don't need to take any official action to vote on it because we passed it. To Art's point, I've come to know you both pretty well. I have every optimistic and belief and understanding that I know you both can do this. I had discussions with Brad after what happened, and Brad told me, sorry, I don't mean to out you on this, but Brad told me that the relationship is good and that they're working together well. So I have every expectation that things will improve. So I'm gonna end on this point. We had a good evaluation. We heard some good things. We heard some areas of improvement that we'd like to see. We have a plan going forward. We have no old business. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Thank you to the public for everything that you brought to us. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to the employees, our police, everyone that came out to provide their feedback. It's important for us for context. Having said that, I'd like to ask for a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
and all in favor?
Yeah,
Yes, okay.